Hi, this is Mike with Justin. Then this is State of the Giants, and this is our first podcast covering the show The Boys. And I'm with my Mike, and my co-host joins me. With it that background's awesome. That's awesome.
So I wanted to find one that was the background from that one scene this
Yeah,
season. You know which one I'm talking about,
I do. I do. I
but I
do.
couldn't find one in high enough resolution. Like that would have been amazing though.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So we both fell into the boys. Just a little quick background. And I love it because it is just it's very much Garth Ennis's work where he is very anti-superhero. And that comes through in his previous comics, but believe that excuse me, I'm getting far ahead of myself. He was the author or one of the authors of The Boys, the comic book from which this is derived. And there's quite a few differences between that. We're not going to be covering the comic book. We're just focusing on the show and the week to week changes therein, and that's about it. But so what were your thoughts, or how do you find the boys? And what do you speak to that? Like what draws you to the boys and keeps you coming back?
You got me into the boys. Like I think you
Sure.
mentioned you were the first person I heard anything about it from. I think I like saw some ads or like still ads. They weren't like video ads, and I heard about it from you. I'm like, you know what? I'll check this out, and I got really into it really quick. I like these sort of irreverent take on superheroes. As Mike
Right.
said, Garth Ennis, he hates superheroes, and he wrote an entire, it was more than 50 chapters. That was a fairly long comic by American standards for something
Yeah.
serialized where it's not like resetting and new authors, things like that. It ran for a pretty long time. So it's like, okay, yeah, I'll check this out. And got it. I'm like, this is great. I binged the first two seasons because I didn't start watching until after the second season it ended. So
Right.
binged the first two seasons of like, this is great. Just been sitting back and waiting for this third season that just started last week.
Yeah, and this is put out by Amazon too. They own they've done a great job. This is definitely a top tier a quality show for sure. It's funny in the right places. It has good acting, good all around. The people who play the characters, it's as if not giving anything away, but it's as if you were to take a real world version of like what would really happen if we had somebody that had godlike powers like a Superman or Wolverine or whatever, those type of, or Captain America. What would really happen if those guys were in the real world, and they had the fame and the money and all that? Would there be any corruption? And of course, I think this is a pretty straight down the line take on that. But it's just put together, and it's all over good. And that has me keep coming back. Anyway, getting to the point here, after we have a little background there, we have Amazon released this on June 3rd and last Friday, and they dropped 3 episodes. So that was awesome. I was surprised. What was your take when you saw this first one, this episode 1?
Oh, I just want to say that those 3 episodes went by really, really, really quickly. I was
Yeah.
wanting more. I'm like, why did you do this to me? Why couldn't you give me one more? But I know if I watch one more, it's gonna be just give me one more, and then I want to see the
Yep.
whole thing right then and there. And I think it's good that they're teasing us a little bit, tickling us a bit, uh, instead of giving us the whole thing. But I think they gave us enough content with those 3 episodes that if you were ever like, oh, I don't know if I want to follow along with this, by the end of that third episode, you know whether this is something you want to stick with.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Yeah, same way. I started watching the first one, got through it. I was like, oh yeah, I'll watch the second one. Got done. I was planning. I was like, oh, then I'll go to bed. Nope. I
So
was like, you know
I
what?
sat there just like for what is it? It's a 45-minute episode
Yeah, I
for
think so.
three of those, whatever they are.
Yeah, yeah,
Multiple hours, more than 2 hours I sat there. And like it's weird because if you ask me sit through like a 2-hour Marvel movie or something like that, I'm like, do I really need to sit through this for 2 hours? But I wanted
Right.
more at the end here.
Yeah.
The first episode, the boys was the boys. They reminded you what you were watching. If you were someone who just accidentally started watching this in the third season, thinking they don't have to catch up or anything, and you see this, what happens at the beginning, you know what you're in for.
Yep.
Very good. I don't think this is a real spoiler because this is out there in anything you read about season 3, any interview or any sort of like promotional thing, but year time skip from the end of season 2. And I think that was nice. Gave it a time. There was some time for like some character development that I think that was needed, but maybe the writers didn't feel like there was time for in the show.
Sure.
Changed a little bit, and maybe that wasn't appropriate. Like seeing it happen wasn't appropriate for a show like this.
Yeah, they crammed in a lot, and so at the end of season 2, they left them off with they were doing filming scenes for a movie or whatever, and then when we're met with season 3, we actually see them at the movie with the premiere and all that, and there's quite a bit of development, and they pretty much kicked it off pretty quick because they were missing members from season 2, so they're down, so they're no longer the 7, they're like the 4, the 5, or whatever it is. So they need to replace those members.
Down 2 members because
that's right.
It's not at this point. If you're watching this, you've watched the first 2 seasons. You know us already. The Deep has been excommunicated from the group, and Black War has suffered a medical issue. So they're down to 5 people, one of whom hasn't been a part of the team very long, Starlight. So
right. Yeah, and she comes to her own, and she becomes a very primary part of the team now. So she actually can swing some weight around, and that plays some tension. And we won't give too much into that, but basically it sets up there's always been this tension with across the show, because there's one Superman type character that is just outwardly looking like a Boy Scout, and inwardly is just evil, just nothing there, nothing of substance, just a horrible thing, just anyway, you have this all-powerful character and everybody's scared of him, and there's this balance of power that they play very well. They do it, and from 1 to the last episode, as we go through these, it sets us up like where we were at, and then it just rolls through, and it worked.
Wow. I think he's kind of terrifying externally too. Like if you look at that smile he's got, they focus a lot on the smile.
Oh yeah, they do. Yeah,
the dude's
they
smile
do.
is freaking terrifying.
Right. Yeah, and we're talking about Homelander, and I'm trying to find his
Antony Starr.
Yeah, Anthony. There we go, right in front of my face. But yeah, Antony Starr, and they have him down perfectly.
Yeah.
For his just this,
great.
He just has this psychotic look on his face, because what they do is throughout the show, throughout the seasons, they actually play his mindset or his thoughts. So he'll like go through like this daydreaming fantasy cycle of like just doing something really drastic and outside the norms, and they do that very well. So when he has those looks, he is, what's going on in his head. Like I realize I can kill every one of you, and nothing would, and I wouldn't even blink, type of thing. So they have a tenuous thread or leash around him, which is very imaginary for sure. And that's not really giving anything away. That's pretty much the setup of the show from season 1 to this point. But not much more to say, but I love this one. I absolutely agree with you. It really puts you in the mindset of wanting more. And again, the actors were great. They knew what they were doing. I think the primary thing that we got from this was there's a little bit of body gore, a little bit of gore.
A little bit, yeah,
just a little bit. In a couple different ways. There was also some other shocking, kind of moments, like where you see that the actual Stormfront, like the primary Nazi character from season 2 is actually alive. That I forgot about that. I forgot that she was alive or whatever. I assumed that she died, honestly.
I remembered that she was still like sort of alive at the end of the last season, but I thought that they were going to just kind of drop that, and they didn't. Right. And it's interesting the way that they didn't drop it.
Right. But you see that she's still on the scene, and there's still this weird thing. And of course, I guess I do have a little bit more to say on it, but essentially, where we leave from season 2 to here is that Homelander is just like a megalomaniac. He is obsessed with having the adoration and love of the public, the American public specifically, actually, to be pinpoint, or their American public, I should say, and their universe. And that's another aspect of the show that I love too, that they no holds bar. They give it to everybody. And that kind of becomes apparent. But Homelander is like kind of he's in the crater for his popularity because he had a relationship with this character that turned out to be a Nazi, etc. In any case, it's so he's at a deficit. So he's probably at the rock bottom of where he's ever been before, as far as things go, like where he's on top of the world. I'm king. Everybody listens to me. He has fallen quite a bit from that height. But anyway, yeah. Anything else to add before we roll into episode 2?
No, I think it is important to note. So Hughie now is working.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Hughie has left the boys. He's working for a government bureau that oversees superheroes. So like he and Butcher have always had this kind of difference in how they saw that superheroes should be handled. They both kind of acknowledge that superheroes are dangerous, that they cause problems, that they hurt innocent people, and they get away with it. But they have different ideas. Butcher is into a violent path. Hughie wants to maybe go a more pacifist path. And by becoming involved in the government bureau, that gives him that opportunity for his approaching the problem in a different way.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. When we start, the power structures are completely different between the boys, between Hughie and the boys. And Hughie is essentially part of the boys. But Karl Urban, Billy Butcher, was the leader. He was the shot caller. And then you had Hughie, so it's inverted now. Now we're in peacetime, so to speak. I think it's the Federal Bureau of Superhuman Affairs or something like that.
Yes.
But in any case, Hughie is the lead agent or the lead whatever. They're doing things the right way. They've actually had some success from the time jump from season 2 to now, and they have put away or fixed a lot of the other issues, like where they have rogue supervillains or superheroes or whatever that would just wreak havoc wherever they were at, and just be a menace to society, literally. So their job was to clean that up, and they did. But it kind of sets up an ultimate betrayal to where it shifts that back. But that's going into that's probably a good segue for us, episode 2.
Yeah.
And as we roll on here, this one was just kind of reading the thing. Yeah, this was his birthday. This was the big where we found out more about Homelander and where Starlight fell in the schema of power for this team. Sorry, you were going to say something?
No. Go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, sets us up for that. We also see kind of some of the potential replacements. I think the big thing from this was Starlight becomes the co-captain of the seven. Yeah, of the 7. And essentially that sets up a power struggle. And it looks like things are going to be okay. But it doesn't stay like that for long. We see new characters that are introduced. Soldier Boy, or excuse me, not Soldier Boy. That's the deeper backer storyline, where that it really comes to the forefront in season 3, or excuse me, episode 3. But we see, I'm trying to find the name of they had like the America's reality show, but for superheroes.
Yeah, like the American Idol for superheroes, where they're going to recruit 2 new members of the 7. Another thing to note, and they talked about it in this episode, we talked about there only being 5 members of the boys, but even of the 5 members who are still around, they're kind of weakened because A-Train can't use his powers in the same way anymore because it could kill him. So
right.
now he was always kind of sort of this kind of like marginal member of the boys. Like everyone makes fun of the Deep, but I feel like when you look at the team, he was probably more integrated and into the team than even A-Train might have been. So A-Train is always trying to like prove himself, and now he's in this situation, and he sometimes does dirty work for the team, but he puts himself in this situation. He's in the situation now. He didn't put himself, well, he did. If you go back into it, he did. He put himself in this situation, but he's now in the situation where he has to find another way to be to kind of remain prominent and stay a member of the 7.
Yeah, because he's on the verge of just slipping off completely.
Right.
He had issues with his powers. Something, I can't remember the details, but something was going on with his heart, and his powers were waning. He did not have his powers like he used to. Something happened, and we're essentially seeing him, that we're seeing the sunset on his character essentially.
He's like an athlete on steroids.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a good analogy.
I think
it's just
he's injecting, like most of the soups, they are just super. I feel like in order for him to keep going, if I remember correctly, he's injecting compound V, and that is messing with his heart, and it could kill him.
Yeah, and I don't have too many photos here, but that was his new outfit anyway. It was kind of funny, and then everybody's freaking out because he did this without permission or whatever, and it's just ridiculous. But a lot of this, and actually I wanted to speak to that too, about how there is the boys are somewhat neutered, I would say, from until we get to the very end of episode 3.
Right.
But they're very neutered. They're not at wartime. They're peacetime. They're not going and what's a good way? What's the old saying? Snapping necks and cashing checks.
They're having they're having to follow a lot of rules that they don't want to follow. So they've gotten legitimacy. They're operating within the law, but it has neutered them. There are things that they want to do, or they feel are necessary to be done, that they can't do because they're under this sort of government bureaucracy. Yeah, and that's the other thing that puts Butcher and Hughie at odds, is that now Hughie, like you said, Hughie kind of has a sort of a superior position, and if anything, he and Butcher are equals now, and Butcher doesn't he's not comfortable with that. He doesn't like that.
Exactly. Yeah, no, he doesn't. He has to really accept it, and but likewise also the 7 is also somewhat neutered, because they've lost a lot of members. They are no longer the premier superhero team. They've been taken down quite a few pegs because of what they've been through. So they also are in a very weak position. So everybody kind of starts at a weak position, and then we kind of just do this dance where everything slowly rotates and flips around eventually. But I was trying to see, read the thing here to jog any other thing, and this kind of speaks to the level of marketing that they've done, that Amazon Prime has done around this stuff. Neither one of you or I have seen it all the way through, or even probably all the way. I've seen one or two of them, but they have a couple of YouTube channels, like where it's Vought News, or it's a Vought YouTube channel, and they'll have like little mini kind of clips talking about the universe, like what's going on, the news of their universe. Just interesting, and very engaging, I think. They really know how to satisfy the fans. I'll say that. I'll say that.
There's also an animated side project. I think it's
That's right.
called The Boys Diabolic, and I know that at least one episode is based off of the comic continuity. So the art is very much like the comic, and it's pretty interesting. They like each episode, it's an anthology series, so each episode is not continuing on another. It's like different art styles, different concepts. So the first episode, you can see some screenshots of that down there where it says videos, but excuse me. It's kind of a sort of like 1940s Looney Tunes style deal. There's another episode where you see what they're doing. Like, we're not going to play the music because we don't want bad things happening to us. But if you heard the music, it's very much the kind of music you would hear in an old like Looney Tunes or an old Tom and Jerry short.
And I have not seen that, but you actually know a little bit more than I do. That's cool. I do want to come back around and see this. Probably when season 3 is done, I have something to look forward to instead of just watching everything all at once. Which is not a bad idea and fun to do, but
just wanted to point it out. Like there's this sort of Boys extended universe that's not only these sort of side projects. I think they're doing another spin-off series as well, but then you have all of the sort of viral marketing YouTube stuff, and their social media team is very, very good. I've seen some of their stuff on, I try to stay off of Twitter, but I've seen some of the stuff their social media team has done on Twitter. They have a very good social media team, which is, if you think about what this show is, that in itself is just it's sort of meta.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it is. It is very, they know what they're doing. And they're doing a very good job with this. It's just a breath of fresh air in general from just the superhero fatigue that is the current, pop culture. And there's nothing wrong with any of that. That's all wonderful, beautiful stuff. But sometimes you can only soak up so much of one thing. And it is what it is. But this definitely sets the stage. And any other thoughts on episode 2?
No, like without getting into like any real spoilers, although we do get to see Soldier Boy for the first time.
That's true. Yeah. We actually see the background and so that there's a deeper storyline where as things progress, the boys kind of come back together and they're back at that war footing, that war stance, like where it's like things flip and shift. And we go from Hughie like realizing the world is not exactly as he thinks it is when reality crashes into him, without giving anything away too much. But that sets us up for getting the boys back together and getting them, and you kind of still get their antics, so to speak. Like there's this, I forgot to say in episode 1, there's a small little scene like where they comment on that as far as like if anybody of the boys or Butcher's involved, everything's going sideways. And it's not, it's something is always bound to happen that is bad, so to speak. So they definitely have the reputation following them for sure. But this kind of sets us up with this episode 3,
right?
And we see now the power structures by the end of this episode are completely inverted. So now instead of Hughie being on top, now Butcher's back on top as like the primary person that would run the show. And then we also have Homelander, where he's kind of in this conundrum, and then essentially he reasserts his that he is in fact the 800-pound gorilla.
Right.
Period. End of discussion. There is
He's
no
the
more
apex
debate.
Predator. Yes.
Yep. And Starlight she like always that happens when I don't know, I can't do it justice, but like when the immovable object hits irresistible force or whatever.
Right.
I'm butchering that, but essentially that's what happens, and we see what always happens. Everything kind of deforms to Homelander's will. So we see this setup like where Butcher and Homelander are back, essentially where we ended up, where the primary pull of the show is. So there's this antagonism But now the boys have to figure out, it's for all the marbles, essentially, is what they're at now. So maybe they have a few more resources. We're not sure. They seem to be more, have quite a bit of more authority than they did ever before. So it's setting at the table as we kind of roll through this. And this description doesn't really do anything. See, this is like
Right.
written like their marketing or whatever. But anyway, I'm not sure there's much more to say, or that I have much more to say. But man, I'm just glad it's back. And I'm really looking forward to this Friday for episode 4. Any other thoughts on episode 3 or the boys in general, or what you're looking forward to, or anything down the line?
I want to say about this episode. So they showed some of a couple of characters when they were younger, and the actors they got to play those younger characters were absolutely spot on. Like, I think you'd have to go into like the all cast and crew to see them, but they did a phenomenal job in casting those actors to play the younger characters.
Right. Yeah, definitely. They did. Because they did it. That was this one was the primary flashback sequence where it showed kind of the backstory of who these people were and what happened to character, and
Right.
are they
Yeah.
back there? But I forgot about this too. Yeah. It sets up a completely different avenue that we've never seen in the boys before. Pretty much throughout this whole show, we have we're primarily in the United States, and dealing with that primarily in their version of the United States, and Vought being the ultra megacorp. We do kind of go to other locations in countries, but only briefly, and it doesn't really mean anything at the end. But, and I'm not going to give anything away. Now we actually see, we have that question that I think a couple people may have been curious about, which was, what about the other countries in this world? How are supers impacting them? And they only scratch, they barely even touch the surface of it up to this point. But now we're about ready to have that be opened up quite a bit more. And I'm looking forward to that, because I want to see how that interplays with everything else. That'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that, because if you notice, all the superheroes we see are American superheroes. We don't actually see any superheroes from other. Well, I think we did. We have seen some superheroes from other countries, but I think we saw a Russian superhero. But like, this series is very much kind of caught up in a sort of Cold War aesthetic. So you have to. There's this understanding that the United States has heroes and Russia has heroes, but you never hear anything about heroes in other parts of the world.
And we don't see quite to the level of like, and this is spoilers for a completely different series, but I can't help but think about this occasionally, which is the Watchmen, and that comic book show, or excuse me, that comic book series. Not the show. The show's completely different than the comics, but that's a whole different thing. But going to the comics, you see like where there is another storylines involving the Watchmen. One thing this world hasn't done that they did in the Watchmen was, what happens when a superhero kind of comes on the scene and fights a war for the U.S. or for Russia or for whatever, whatever those might be.
I think we kind of saw that, because remember you said they show that footage of Soldier Boy fighting in World War II. So.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, I guess they did. I guess, you know what? Yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot that Soldier Boy is from that era, because there's been multiple superhero teams that have waxed and waned in this world too. What were they called? What was that group of folks called? Their superhero team with Soldier Boy. I can't recall.
Payback.
Yeah, that's right.
So they're I think in the comic, they're like the version of the Avengers. Payback, Avengers. Okay. So
that makes sense. That rings true. That makes that total. Yeah, I also wanted to comment and agree with you on the actors that they had who played the younger versions of the Vought Avengers or whatever, or the Vought world, Vought universe, Vought verse. I'm not quite sure what that would be, but yeah. Actually, this is not the younger actress, but
No, she played the Crimson Countess. Also, I believe she was in The Walking Dead.
Was
So
she?
I think there are a number of people in the
Oh.
series who are also in The Walking Dead, because I think that
Huh.
well, no, I'm thinking
Yeah,
in
she was.
Invincible, because I know a number of the people on Invincible, they also played on the Walking Dead. Like a lot
You're
of them
right.
were recast. But
You're right. You're
she was in
absolutely
The
right.
Walking Dead, and I think there was someone else who was a guest star on The Boys who also had been on The Walking Dead.
Yeah, they that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, Invincible is another one we might end up covering too. We'll see how things go, but yeah, I'm just glad to see it all back. It's just out friggin' standing, and I'm boy, I was probably of all three of these, I was shocked most by episode 1, just from what transpired.
Yeah.
Like right away. Not you didn't have to wait long, and then probably also at the last episode, like where because you had like see like what's what, and it sets up what happened next. For sure, for sure.
So there's certain things that I want to know about the world that the series takes place in that I know they're not going to get to, because if you watch the show in general, what's going on in The Boys, it's about America. So we're probably
Right.
not going to see a bunch of like foreign superheroes, but you have to wonder, like, in a world like this, are there Japanese superheroes? Are there like otaku who like are like anime fans who are like super into Japanese heroes?
Good point.
Does anyone else have them? Like our heroes like nuclear weapons where not everyone has them, but some countries do? We
Right.
don't really know anything except the United States and Russia. We haven't heard anything about Canadian superheroes.
That's true.
So maybe superheroes only exist in the United States and in Russia, other
Right.
than the sort of, well, no, because remember in season 2, Compound V got released.
Yeah, that's where the world part kind of came in just a little bit,
Right.
like where they zoomed off, took care of the threat, then they zoomed out or whatever. They didn't spend too much time on it. But yeah, that is true. They did. Yeah, so somehow, some way, Compound V got leaked. Oh, and then the other thing, and this isn't really a spoiler because it sets up a primary leveling the playing field, maybe with Butcher. But they also have this new temporary temp V, where a person gets temporary superhero powers for 24 hours, and then it goes away, I guess. So we're gonna see how that goes, but
it doesn't go all the way away.
no, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, there seems to be some lingering issues there, but who knows like what that will be, or if it'll set up another conundrum with it.
I feel like it already is, because remember, Billy hates superheroes, but he's kind of becoming what he hates in order to, what's it that Batman said? You either die a hero or you live long enough to be a villain.
Become the villain. Yep, that's true. Very good, Master Wayne. For sure. Yeah, Batman. That's a good point. Yeah, that kind of sets us up. I mean, it's not like and that's kind of weird that they would do that with Butcher, but I guess that is the only core of him left, I guess, because we've kind of seen his character from start to finish just be just be broken down completely, and then kind of revenge his way back to life, I guess. I don't know how to put it, but
I think so. But you're taking V, that is a holdover from the comics, because I think all of the boys have superpowers in the comics. They shoot V regularly so that they can have superpowers and fight with Supes. But the thing is that, so people talk about, I'm going off on a little tangent here, but people talk about like adaptations from like a comic or a book to a television series, in particular to comics, the changes that are made.
Right.
This is vaguely based off of the comic. They've made, just from what I've read, they've made a number of changes. The tone is, there's certain things that are tonally similar, but as a whole, the tone of the series is a little bit different, because what the series is trying to do in the comic is different than what this television series is trying to do. So I feel like if you like one, you may not necessarily like the other, but like if you like the television show, from what I've read, it seems like you wouldn't really like the comic very much. But they have taken a lot of elements from the comic to build the basis of the show, and they've done it really well.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. This is like one of the rare events where they take something from one media and they adapt it to another, and it works perfectly. I
think they made it more accessible. I think
I agree.
The comic is very much a comic making fun of other comics. And if you're not into comics, I feel like you probably, that's gonna fall really flat for you. But if you take it and make it more of kind of like a social sort of like I guess a spoof or a commentary, then you can do something very different with it.
Very true. Yeah. And this is one of the, both you and I both had no exposure to this comic book beforehand.
No, not at all.
Now, since then, I have read quite a few volumes of them. So I still have a little bit more reading to do. But I am a filthy casual comic book fan, I would say. Meaning that I don't necessarily stick around for any storyline. I might go years and years without buying a comic book. But then I'll go through phases where I'll, catch up on storylines that I was curious about, or kind of pop in and see what's going on. I do follow some comic book YouTubers quite frequently. And of course, there's other things in the last 6 months or so since that has like absolutely skyrocketed my exposure and experience with comic books on a more pretty regular basis for entertainment purposes. But it's been good. That's just the problem, I think, with American comic books are there's a whole lot of crap. Or just either garbage or even if it's not garbage, it's just okay. It's like a good storyline to read, but I wouldn't necessarily say to go hunt and search for it to read it. There's only like 1 to 5% of all comic books that really rise to the top that have storylines that just are very, very memorable and just amazing. Where the writing lines up, the artwork is beautiful. Everything lines up, and The Boys comic book is one of those comic books, and it's very rare too, because it's not by DC, it's not by Marvel, it's its own. I believe it was independent. I could be wrong on that. But
actually, The Boys originally it started as like a DC. It was published by DC originally, and then it went to I think Dynamite, which is one of like the micro indies. So like you get Marvel and DC.
Right.
And when you're talking American comics, if you start getting into like manga, then you've got like Viz, which is, and then you start getting into Scholastic, things like that. But I digress. You have Marvel and DC, then you have Image and Dark Horse,
right,
and IDW ish, right. And then below that you have a bunch of like what I call micro indies: Boom, TKO, Dynamite, Absolute. Just much smaller companies that are making comics, and The Boys moved from DC to Dynamite, which seems like a downgrade, but I think they were probably able to do a lot of the stuff that they were able to do, which has allowed us to have the product that we're enjoying, because they were a smaller publisher that didn't have the same expectations for sales, and also didn't have the same sort of mainstream name that could be sort of sullied by a product that wasn't like nice and squeaky clean, you know what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah, because they have to, like, corporate has to be pleased, and they're very much Disney-ified, so to speak. Like where big corp is much more of the inline thing now. But it is what it is. But I don't want to get too far afield. But yeah, I agree with that. That good breakdown too. That's the fun thing about these things are that it's still an alive medium. Maybe not necessarily comic books per se, but it's not like the old days, like where like a kid goes up and gets it. Well, that's not the primary demographic that they are buying comic books. It's more adult, older teens and adults are buying. I'm sure there are
I
a
wouldn't
segment
even
of
say
kids,
older
maybe.
teens, man. I think the
Yeah.
typical person buying a comic book, like a floppy comic book in America right now, probably a guy in his late 40s, maybe early 50s. Like, there may be some, I'm sure there's some young, like some older teens who are reading comics, particularly some of the indies. I'm sure there may be some kids that are reading some comics, but American comics, but younger people, the preferences for like manga or webtoon or something like that, like a comic, but that's something very different from the traditional sort of American floppy legacy character, floppy based legacy character. Yeah,
they're very true. Yeah, and it was not ever like it was like when growing up 20, 30 years ago, where you had kids buy comic books.
You could still buy comics at like 7-Eleven when I was a kid. Like you couldn't go to a 7-Eleven and buy a comic book now, but they still had the spinner racks.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, they've migrated over to other media. They're manga. There's other things even beyond written material or digital publication, like where folks have moved on, and they don't hold the weight that they once did long ago. Now, well, anyway, we could go on forever, but
yeah, that's like another podcast thing.
But interestingly enough, I'll leave this as the last point. Is that in some ways the physical media has either died or is dying off or is in some state of much less, reputation than it was, or the numbers that it used to generate, versus now they have transpired to the big screen, and they are huge. Disney, Marvel over there, they essentially have a money printing machine. Whenever they want to do it, they just put out, and then it's just print money. And DC's not been as successful, but they still have
what's weird?
A lot of money.
No one else has tried to get into like making superhero stuff. Like you could argue that Amazon has gotten into superheroes because they're doing the Boys extended universe and then Invincible, but the superheroes, if you look at the Boys and you look at the Invincible, or not the Invincible, am I like 80? Invincible, they're doing something very different with their superhero property, like the superhero properties they're kind of acting as custodians for, as opposed to what Marvel and DC are doing with Disney and now I guess Discovery.
Right.
But there's no one else in there. Like there's no one else doing superheroes. But I guess is there anyone? Is there one?
I would push
Netflix
back
tried.
A little bit. Yeah, I would push back a little bit, and I would say that yeah, you're right. There has been other companies that have tried. Netflix has tried, and they had they failed. I can't remember. It was Jupiter or something or other.
Jupiter's Legacy. Oh my God, that was terrible.
Yeah, that was just didn't catch on.
So bad.
I know people that liked it, but that doesn't equate keeping it around.
Right.
But yeah, they've attempted at it, but nobody's been as good or successful as. I would actually argue Amazon Prime has been wildly more successful than even Disney Marvel with their new kind of rotation to miniseries and all that. The last one I watched was Moon Knight. I don't watch. I don't have time for everything and anything, but even that was like six episodes. But I would say that if you're talking about like longevity and consistency, I think Amazon Prime is king of the house right now. Or they're the king for as far as creating interesting content with these very realistic train wrecks of humanity that really stretches the imagination of what we call what is acceptable for humanity, for their actions and whatnot, just for the disregard for it. But anyway, this just sets us up to. You can clearly tell that we both love the show for sure.
It's a very good show.
It is. It is. I just love it because, again, I kind of touched on it a little bit before, and while we're wrapping up. But I would say, any caricature or whatever that has been out in the last 3, 4, or 5 years, they make fun of it, and they give it to everybody, and they incorporate caricatures from our world into theirs. That is just like over the top. It's just like so ridiculous, but it works. It's almost a signature of that world of like these over the top, just corroding powers at play. It's just pretty much a question of like how corroded is it, if it exists. And I think I dig that. Anyway, but with that being said, do you have anything else while we wrapping up here?
No, I think I'm good, Mike.
Cool. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, Justin. And this has been the State of the Giants, the Boys Edition. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.